The sky tore open above New York like someone had dragged a knife through glass. No one on the street understood what they were seeing. Tourists stared up with phones held high. Vought cameras on the plaza below kept rolling. A giant screen on the side of the Vought tower played a bright ad for the 7. Then the tear in the air widened, and something fell out of it. He did not scream. He did not flail. An older man in dark clothes tumbled once through the rift, and then caught himself, body wrapped in a shimmer of force. He hit the open space above the plaza as if he had simply decided to stand there, in midair, coat hanging straight down in perfect balance. People gasped. Someone yelled that it was a new soup. Someone else shouted for Homelander. The man's helmet was smooth metal, red and fierce. It covered most of his face, but his jaw was hard and his mouth pulled tight. His eyes, visible under the rim, were calm in a way that made people more afraid, not less. His name was Eric Lensher. In his own world, they called him Magneto. Here, no one knew that name yet. He looked down and saw the logos first. Giant glowing V's. The 7 in fake heroic poses. Smiles that did not reach their eyes. The plaza was arranged like a shrine to power, but not the kind he respected. His fingers twitched. Every metal object within 20 meters answered that tiny movement. Coins rattled in pockets. Parked cars rocked on their shocks. Bolts in the pavement whined as they twisted a fraction of an inch. A row of armed security guards on the edge of the crowd froze as their rifles lifted straight out of their hands, pulled by an invisible tide. The gun stopped halfway to him and hung there, broken into neat pieces. Barrels, triggers, magazines, stripped apart in the air like toys. A woman screamed. The sound spread, panic jumping from person to person. People surged toward the exits of the plaza. The crush began. Eric felt the fear rise. He had seen crowds panic before. He had seen what happened when people were trapped with nowhere to go. "Enough," he whispered. The word was soft, but the metal heard the command. The parked cars on the street lifted up and swung sideways, forming a wide, curving wall. Streetlights bent. In seconds, a shield of steel and chrome grew around the rushing crowd, guiding them toward open streets and away from choke points. To the people below, it looked like the city itself had moved to protect them. To Eric, it was simple. He would not watch another group of helpless people get crushed while those in power watched from safe windows. A blue and red blur streaked past the giant Vought logo, cutting across the sky. Cameras snapped to follow it. A-Train came to a sliding stop on the far edge of the plaza, chest heaving like he had just sprinted. "Yo!" A-Train called, forcing a grin as he looked up. "New guy. You can't just float over a Vought event, man. That's like a brand violation." He said it like a joke, but his eyes were tight as they tracked the metal drifting around the stranger. Eric studied him for a second. The suit, the logo, the ego. Another fast young man who thought speed meant control. He flicked 2 fingers. The nearest streetlight groaned and bent, its metal post twisting sideways. A-Train yelped as the lamp curled around his torso and pinned his arms, pressing him gently but firmly against a concrete pillar. He was not hurt. He was simply stuck. The crowd gasped. Phones rose higher. Somewhere, a producer shouted into an earpiece for Homelander now. The air changed. Eric felt it before he saw anything. A pressure, like the sky itself was watching. Then a white cape cut across the sunlight, and a man in red, white, and blue dropped from above, landing on the far edge of the plaza with a heavy crack of concrete. Homelander smiled for the cameras first. Then he looked up at the stranger in the air. "Well," Homelander said, his voice echoing from hidden speakers, "this is new." Eric's shield of floating metal thickened around him. He met Homelander's eyes without flinching. "To you," Eric said. "To me, this is all very familiar." Homelander's smile flickered. "And who exactly are you supposed to be?" Every phone stayed pointed up. The giant screen behind Homelander froze mid-frame as Eric's power brushed across the circuits. The older man in the helmet inclined his head, just slightly. "I am someone," he said. "Your world should have feared a long time ago." Huey watched the footage on his cheap laptop with his mouth hanging open. The video was shaky, taken from someone's phone in the plaza, but the image was still clear enough. A wall of cars hanging in the air, guns broken into pieces, a slim older man floating above it all, cape still, eyes sharp. "Okay," Huey said weakly. "So that's new." The screen brightness kept flickering. Every time the stranger raised his hand in the video, the image glitched for a second, as if the laptop itself was nervous. Butcher stood behind him with his arms crossed. He chewed on the end of a toothpick and stared at the screen like he wanted to punch it. "That's an understatement, Huey," Butcher said. "Bloke drops out of a hole in the sky, turns the street into a junkyard ballet, and makes Golden Boy look like he's posing for school photos. That's not just new. That's a bloody paradigm shift." Mother's Milk sat on the couch with a notepad balanced on his knee. He had paused the footage on the frame where the stranger pinned A-Train with the bent street light. "Look at his face," MM said quietly. "He's not even trying. This isn't effort." Kimiko leaned forward, eyes wide, looking at the floating metal. Her fingers flexed, like she wanted to grab something and throw it. Frenchie, sitting cross-legged on the floor, puffed on a vape and narrowed his eyes at the helmet on the screen. "You see that?" he said. "The helmet. It is not just for fashion. Something about it. I don't know. It is like he is wrapped in his own little bunker." On the screen, Homelander landed. The video shake grew worse as people screamed and scrambled. Huey's chest tightened, even though he knew he was only watching, not there. Homelander smiled, said something Huey couldn't hear over the crowd, and the stranger answered. Someone closer had caught the sound on another camera, and the clip cut to that angle. The older man's voice was rough and steady. "I am someone your world should have feared a long time ago." Huey paused the video there. He turned in his chair. "So, thoughts?" Butcher snorted. "Thought is, this is either the best gift we've ever had, or the start of something that ends with us all as ash. Depends which way he points." "Can we not jump straight to Ash?" Huey said. "Maybe he's, here to help?" Butcher looked down at him like Huey had suggested tea with Homelander. "People with that much power don't just help," Butcher said. "They rule. Or they try to. Vought's already writing speeches about him." "Speaking of Vought," MM said, tapping his notepad, "they've got to be scrambling. New soup, no launch event, no contract, no control. That's their nightmare. They'll want to either own this guy or bury him." Frenchie nodded. "And we, my friends, would like to know which before they make their move." The room fell silent for a moment. The sound of police sirens drifted faintly through the cracked window. Somewhere far off, a news anchor's voice boomed from a bar TV, talking about today's shocking new threat. Huey swallowed. "So what do we do?" Butcher's grin came slow and sharp. "We find him first." High above the city, Eric Lensher stood on the steel skeleton of an unfinished tower and watched the world try to explain him. Wind pulled at his coat. His boots rested on a crossbeam 40 floors up, but there was no fear in his stance. If the beam vanished, the magnetic field around him would hold him in place without a second thought. He had learned long ago that the ground only had power over you if you let it. A small, battered radio floated in the air beside him, its casing unscrewed and its guts exposed. Bits of metal wire drifted around Eric's hand as he bent the device's innards, with tiny, careful gestures, tuning into different frequencies without touching the dial. Experts say, a voice crackled, that the unknown superhuman may be using some kind of advanced magnetic tech. He flicked his fingers, and the station switched. Terrorist event, possibly foreign, possibly linked to an anti-sup extremist group. Another flick. Homelander arrived within seconds, protecting civilians from further harm. Eric turned the radio off. Down below, the Vought Plaza looked small. Tiny ambulances. Tiny people. The giant screen on the tower had already been replaced with a polished statement. A new animation showed Homelander standing tall in front of a shadowy figure. Text rolling about emerging threats and the safety of our great nation. They were fast at these people. Fast at lying. He had seen it before. Governments, companies, movements with symbols and songs. It did not matter what they called themselves. When they wanted power over others, they all told the same stories. Eric's jaw clenched. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a thin metal disc, smooth and silver. It had once been a coin in another world. Now it was a weight in his hand, a reminder. He rubbed his thumb over the worn edge. His mind flashed through images he did not allow to surface for long. Barbed wire, striped uniforms, a boy screaming as the gates closed. Never again, he said under his breath. A gust of wind tugged at the radio, but it held steady in the air, locked in place by the field around him. Other signals still buzzed on other channels. Police bands, security chatter, someone from Vought yelling about locking down airspace. He let his awareness spread. Metal was everywhere. It was in the steel bones of the skyscraper under his feet. It was in the cars crawling along the streets. It was in the tiny bits of iron, in the blood of the people walking fast, heads down, lives small. He could feel the whole city like a map drawn in metal. He closed his eyes for a second. Not his world, not his timeline. But the taste of it was the same. People hurt, people used, power worshipped like a god. He opened his eyes when he felt something else pull at his senses. A cluster of metal objects moving together, slow and steady, toward the alley behind the tower. He turned his head and frowned. Guns. 3 of them. Cheap, mass-made pistols, hidden under coats. They moved with the soft, careful rhythm of people who did not want to be seen. He sighed. So they had decided to send a welcoming committee. Annie. January stood in the back of the Vought briefing room, hands clenched tight around a plastic cup of coffee that had gone cold 15 minutes ago. The big screen at the front of the room showed a frozen image of the stranger from the plaza. Older man, red helmet, cape, metal floating around him like a crown. Someone in graphics had already added a question mark under his face. Unknown, the caption read. Ashley paced at the front, chewing on her pen cap. Okay, people, look at this as an opportunity, she said. Yes, a scary, unscripted, horrifying opportunity. But still an opportunity. A-Train sat with his arms folded, still a little pale. He wrapped me in a street light. Yes, and thank God you're okay, Ashley said, not sounding like she cared much, which is a great story for the talk shows. Vulnerable, but strong. Deep caught Annie's eye from across the room and gave her a weak shrug. He had clearly hoped this week's chaos would not be about someone else. Homelander lounged in his chair near the front, cape draped just so, legs spread wide. He watched his own image on one side of the screen in a loop, landing on the plaza, looking up, smiling. It had been cut just before the moment when his smile twitched. Stan Edgar, standing near the wall with his hands behind his back, was the only one who seemed calm. We have a powerful unknown, he said. He appears to control metal on a scale we have not seen before. He arrived through an anomaly we have also not seen before. That gives us 2 problems, and, if handled well, 1 edge." "And what edge is that?" Homelander asked, not taking his eyes off the screen. Stan smiled slightly. "We can decide what the world thinks he is, before he decides it for himself." Annie shifted her weight. Her stomach turned. "Shouldn't we try talking to him?" she asked. Her voice sounded too small in the room, but she kept going. "He protected people down there. He didn't hurt anyone unless they went at him first." Homelander's head turned slowly toward her. His eyes were bright and flat. "Didn't hurt anyone?" he said. "He grabbed my city and twisted it like a tin can. He humiliated one of my team on live TV." A-Train sank lower in his chair. "He made me look weak," Homelander said. "That is hurting people." Annie met his gaze and felt the old fear crawl up her spine. She forced herself not to look away. Stan broke the tension with a smooth nod. "We will consider outreach," he said, "but not from a position of weakness. If we send anyone, it will be someone who can also appear as a symbol of hope, someone the public already trusts." His eyes flicked to Annie for a brief second. She understood what that meant. Ashley clapped her hands. "Great. So we're agreed. Starlight does a gentle, humanizing first contact. Not near cameras, of course, unless it goes well. Then lots of cameras." Homelander smiled at Annie again, teeth just a bit too sharp. "Don't worry," he said. "If he hurts you, we'll make him very sorry." Annie swallowed. She was not worried about being hurt. She was worried about what would happen if this man decided Homelander was the problem and not the hero. The 3 men in cheap suits thought they were very sneaky. They moved through the alley one after the other, guns tucked into shoulder holsters under thin jackets. They had the look of private security, or maybe small-time muscle hired for a big-time job. Their shoes were too new. Their eyes kept flicking up to the steel jungle above them. "Intel says he's up there," the first one muttered. "Top beams. Vought wants eyes on him, nothing more." "Yeah, sure," the second one snorted. "Vought never wants only eyes. They want a leash." The third one stayed quiet, hand resting near his gun. They did not look up at the exact right moment, which was when a loose nail on the fire escape stairs in front of them popped out of the metal with a quiet ping and floated in the air. Eric watched them from 4 floors up. He let them reach the middle of the alley, where the walls were closest. Then he extended his hand. The guns in their holsters jerked. All 3 men froze as the metal at their sides pulled forward, fighting the leather, the stitches, their own hands. One man grabbed at his holster to hold the weapon in place. The second yelped as his gun slipped free and rose straight up, spinning in the air over his head. "Don't," Eric said. His voice carried down the alley, low but sharp. The men looked up. He stepped off the beam and floated down, coat flaring slightly. The air hummed softly around him. The 3 pistols hung in the space between them, slowly spinning. "Guns are such ugly things," Eric said. "You trust them too much." The first man tried a smile. "Sir, we're just here to talk. Our employer wants to own what he does not understand," Eric finished. "Of course he does." He flicked his wrist. The guns came apart in mid-air, their pieces separating and hanging like a field of metal leaves. The running gag chose that moment to show itself. From the pocket of the loudest man's jacket, a ring of keys wiggled free and shot up as well, joining the cluster. His ID badge clip snapped and clanged against a floating screw. The man stared up at his own keys, mouth open. Eric almost smiled. "Metal is honest," he said. "It comes when called." He picked one pistol barrel out of the cloud and held it between 2 fingers. "Go back to your employer," he said. "Tell him I am not a weapon he may aim. Tell him I am not one of his soupies." The word tasted strange in his mouth. The third man, the quiet one, swallowed. "If we don't..." If we go back with nothing? Eric's eyes softened for a second. He knew the look of men trapped by people above them. He let the gun parts clatter harmlessly to the ground. The keys dropped as well, landing at their owner's feet. "Then take something," he said. He reached out with his awareness, farther this time, brushing across the street. A block away, at the corner, a news van's camera jerked on its mount. The metal frame groaned. The camera's guts twisted. In the live feed running back to Vought, the picture broke into static. "Tell him I can do that from here," Eric said. "To all of his cameras at once, if I wish." The men stared at him. "Go," Eric said, turning away. "And tell him next time he should send someone who asks, not someone who hides." He rose back into the air as they scrambled out of the alley, shaken. As he lifted, he felt another presence moving toward the tower. One glowing, hot, and familiar in the way that only certain kinds of people were. Someone who carried light inside their skin. He turned toward it and waited. Annie found him perched halfway up the half-finished tower, sitting on a beam like it was a park bench. She had flown up slow, hands glowing just enough to steady herself. She wore her softer costume, the one marketing said made her look approachable. No cameras, no Homelander, just her and the wind and the strange man who had bent a whole plaza. He looked at her as she stopped a safe distance away, boots hovering above the steel. His eyes were sharp, but not wild. "Hello?" she said, trying to sound calm. "I'm Starlight." "I know," he said. "They put your face on many screens." She flushed. "Yeah, that's kind of the problem." He tilted his head. "Do you serve them willingly?" Annie blinked. "Do I? What?" He nodded toward the distant Vought tower. "The ones who own the screens. The ones who tell the stories." The question hurt more than she wanted to show. She thought of contract pages, of fake smiles, of times she had wanted to walk away and had not. "I used to think I did," she said slowly. "Now I'm not so sure." He watched her for a long moment. The metal on the beam under him hummed softly, matching his mood. "You protected people down there," she said. "You didn't have to. You could have just walked away. Or flown away. Whatever you do. I do not walk away from such things," he said. There was no pride in it, just fact. "Who are you?" she asked. The wind carried the words off the steel. Eric looked out over the city. For a moment, his face softened, and she saw something old and tired under the helmet. "In my world," he said, "I was born weak, small, put into a place where people decided my life had no value." Annie's throat tightened. "They put numbers on our arms," he said. "They took our names. They told us we were less than human. Tools. Trash. The world watched and did nothing." He closed his hand around the coin in his palm. "I learned," he said quietly, "that power in the hands of monsters must be broken, or it will always return." Annie swallowed hard. "And now?" "Now I see another world," he said, "where children are given your compound, turned into weapons for profit, where people clap for men who burn cities if the camera angle is pretty." He looked at her. "You shine, Starlight. But do you know what you are shining for?" The words hit her like a slap and a hug at the same time. She thought of the file she had once seen, hidden in a drawer. Baby pictures. Blue vials. Rows of small bodies in cold rooms. "I know enough to hate it," she said. "I'm trying to change it from the inside." He did not laugh, which somehow made it worse. "Change from the inside is a slow fire," he said. "Often the house burns you before you reach the door." "Maybe," she said, "but some of us can't just float above it all and make walls out of cars. His lips twitched, almost a smile. Fair, he said. For a moment, they simply stood there, two bright points above a city that did not deserve either of them. Vought is scared of you, she said. They're already spinning you as a threat. Terrorist, foreign invader. They're good at it. Let them be afraid, he said. Fear makes arrogant men show their hands. They won't stop, Annie said. They'll send people, deals, threats. They'll try to make you one of their stories. And you? He asked. What will you do, Starlight? She took a breath. I'll tell you the truth when I can, she said. I'll try not to lie for them. She hesitated. And I'll warn you when they're about to do something really stupid. He studied her for another long second, then nodded once. Then we have an understanding, he said. Not an alliance. Not yet. But something. Back in the safe house, Huey's phone buzzed. He picked it up and squinted at the message. It's Annie, he said. She says, he's not with Vought. He hates them, but he doesn't trust anyone. He's seen things like this before. Don't approach him like a soup. Approach him like a survivor. Butcher snorted. Lovely. Another traumatized demigod. Rubbed his forehead. We need more than that. We need facts. Where he came from. What he wants long term. Frenchie grinned. Then we ask him, kindly, with perhaps a very small plan, in case he tries to turn us into paperclips. Kimiko signed quickly, sharp motions. Huey translated out of habit. She says he protects people, but he is like a bomb. If he explodes, we all go. Butcher's smile went thin. Then, lads, he said, we better learn which way he's wired before Vought does, or before Homelander decides to poke the bomb to see what happens. Outside, sirens wailed. On every TV in the city, Vought anchors talked about security, safety, and threats from beyond. High above them all, Eric Lenscher stood alone on a steel beam, feeling the metal heartbeat of a world that did not yet know his name, and decided he would learn its sins before he chose his place in it. The second tear in the sky opened on a day when New York already felt tired. Rain clouds had rolled in after noon. The bright ads on the sides of buildings looked dull against the gray. People walked faster, heads down, thinking about getting home before the storm. No one noticed when the lights over a busy intersection flickered once, twice, and then froze on red in every direction. In a control room miles away, a traffic tech frowned at his monitors. That's weird, he muttered, tapping the screen. The software said everything was fine. The picture said every light in a 10-block radius had just locked up. He reached for his phone. Then the power went out. Not just in his room, not just on his floor. The whole building went dark in a single blink. Monitors died. Emergency lights coughed once and stayed off. Across the city, the same thing happened. Streetlights died. Billboards went black. The massive glowing V on Vought Tower flickered, sputtered, and went dark. People pulled out their phones for light and saw their screens twist with static. In the silence that followed, a low, steady hum began to rise. Huey was in a cab when the city blinked. The radio cut out mid-song. The traffic lights ahead snapped to red and then nothing. The meter on the dashboard went dead. "Aw, come on," the driver groaned, smacking the wheel. "Not today." Huey's phone buzzed once and then showed a blank gray screen. He stared down at it. That's not normal, right? From every direction, horns started to blare as drivers sat in the middle of intersections, unsure what to do. People leaned out of windows and shouted. Somewhere close by, a siren started, and then choked as its power line failed. The air felt heavy, like before a storm, but the clouds overhead did not move. Huey's stomach dropped. This feels like him. he whispered. High on the same unfinished tower as before, Eric Lenscher straightened slowly. He had not caused this. He could feel the difference. When he reached out with his power, the city's metal still hummed, loyal and steady. But wrapped around that familiar field was something else. A strange pressure. A wave of energy that was not his own, pushing through the circuits and wires. His radio, still floating beside him, crackled and died. Its thin metal frame twisted into a useless shape. He turned his eyes to the sky. The tier opened with no light show this time. No color, no sound. One moment the clouds were whole. The next, a strip of gray peeled back, revealing something darker behind it, like the skin of the world had split. From that narrow gap, something slid through. It was not a person, not a living thing in any way humans understood. It was a shape of angles and plates, matte black and dull silver, moving with the smooth calm of a knife pushed through water. Limbs extended, folded, and reformed as it fell. Its head was a flat, blank disc, studded with small sensor pits that glowed a cold blue. Metal, but not simple metal, layered, mixed with things that blurred under his sense, slipping away when he tried to grasp them. Eric's eyes narrowed. He had seen machines like this before. Not this exact design, but close enough. Hunters built by men who feared those like him. Sentinels. Hounds in the shape of soldiers. This one was different. It had passed through the same kind of tier that had pulled him across realities. It carried a taste of somewhere else. Still, its purpose felt the same. It scanned. The machine paused in mid-air above the city, held aloft by hidden thrusters. Panels slid open along its sides. Tiny insect-like drones spilled out and spread in all directions, each one a small point of humming metal. They fanned across the city, forming a moving net. The main unit turned, its blank faceplate rotating. It fixed on Eric's tower like a compass, finding true north. Eric exhaled slowly. "Of course," he said. "You followed." He reached down and felt the steel of the building answer him. Beams hummed, bolts vibrated, nails and rivets whispered like a choir at the edge of hearing. Then the power grid outside the building screamed. At Vought headquarters, backup generators tried to kick in. They spun up, then died as something invisible gripped their cores and twisted. Stan Edgar watched the emergency monitors drop to black. In the brief reflection of the dark screen, he saw his own face, calm as ever. Ashley rushed into the room, breathless. "The whole city, Stan!" she babbled. "Power, comms, everything. And is this him? Is this the metal guy? Because if this is him, the messaging is going to be—" "This is not him," Stan said quietly. She blinked. "How do you know?" He tapped a finger on the dead screen. "Because if it were him, he would not need to hide behind our grid. He would simply crush it." He turned to the few screens still flickering on a separate shielded line. Emergency feeds. Satellite loops. One showed the tear above the city, and the strange shape floating under it. Stan's eyes narrowed. "Well," he said, "apparently our new friend is not the only visitor." Behind him, Homelander stared at the image. For the first time in a long while, he looked almost small. "What is that?" Homelander asked. "A problem we can turn into an opportunity," Stan said, "if we are clever." Homelander's jaw clenched. "No one gets to overshadow me in my own sky." He turned and shot up through the nearest open balcony door, leaving the curtains flapping. The Iron Warden, as some file in some far universe had once called this model, adjusted its readings as Homelander burst into view. It did not care about brand. It did not care about fear. It registered a new energy signature, tagged it as potential threat, and stored it. But it did not change its primary target. the man on the tower, wrapped in a magnetic field that warped instruments. The anomaly who had broken a different world's weapons and walked away. The Warden extended two of its lower limbs, and a cage of non-metallic rods unfolded, crackling with strange energy. It fired the device straight at the tower. Eric felt it coming. He spun, lifting his hands. The steel frame of the building surged up, trying to form a shield. The cage was built to slip through metal fields. It bent, twisted, rode the edges of his power like a fish through a net. It slammed into the side of the tower and collapsed inward, sending a shockwave of force over the beams. Eric's teeth rattled. The impact knocked him sideways. For the first time since arriving on this world, his flight wobbled. Below, a crane arm groaned. Its supports, already stressed by the blackout and the shockwave, snapped. The crane began to fall toward the street, a long arm of steel and cable swinging down toward a cluster of cars, frozen at the dead traffic lights. Eric's attention split. He could let the crane fall and focus on the machine. People would die, but he would remain strong in the fight. He already knew what choice he would make. He reached out, every muscle in his body tensing, as if he were lifting the crane with his hands instead of his mind. Metal screamed as the falling arm slowed, then stopped, hanging inches above the panicked drivers. Glass cracked. A car horn stuck on one long high note. Eric grunted, sweat beading on his forehead. The Iron Warden saw the strain. Its systems recalculated. The best way to neutralize a target like this was not to crush him head-on, but to give him too many things to care about at once. Drones dipped lower. They targeted hospitals, subway entrances, crowded sidewalks. Each tiny machine emitted a burst of energy that sent local circuits into chaos. Elevators jerked to a halt. Electric locks froze. Emergency doors refused to open. The city choked. Huey clawed his way out of the stalled cab and stumbled into the street. Car horns blared all around him. People yelled and shoved. Sirens rose and fell in broken starts as vehicles fought failing systems. He pressed his back against a brick wall and stared up at the sky. The tier, the black machine, the falling crane, now hovering in place like an invisible hand, held it up. "That's him," Huey breathed. "He's holding it." People around him followed his gaze. Some wailed prayers. Some whispered curses. One guy just kept filming, his dead phone held up out of habit. Huey's own phone finally flickered back to life for a second. He saw a flood of texts flash across the screen, all at once. Butcher. MM. Frenchie. Annie. Then the screen went dark again. He shoved it back in his pocket and did the only thing he knew how to do when the world looked like it was ending. He moved people. "This way," he shouted, waving his arms. "Side streets, come on. Don't stand under the crane." A few listened, then a few more. Once a small group started to move, others followed, pushed by fear. Huey led them away from the intersection, heart pounding, legs shaking. He kept glancing up, sure the crane would slip at any second. But it held. Somewhere above, an old man gritted his teeth and refused to let go. Homelander arrived like a missile that had learned to pose. He streaked through the air past the torn sky, cape snapping behind him, fists tight. The Iron Warden registered the heat signature and adjusted position slightly. Homelander came to a sudden stop, a few dozen meters from the machine, chest out, chin raised. "Hey!" he shouted, voice booming. "You picked the wrong city to mess with." The machine did not answer. It did not care about speeches. It fired a lance of crackling energy at him. Homelander laughed as the blast hit his chest. The beam shoved him back a few meters, cape flaring, but when the light cleared, he was still floating, still smiling. "Cute," he said. "My turn." He shot forward, fist cocked, and slammed into the Iron Warden's side. The impact dented one panel. The machine spun, stabilizers screaming, then righted itself. Homelander grabbed a limb and tore it free, tossing it below. Drones swarmed toward him like angry hornets. He burned them out of the air with heat vision and wide, sweeping arcs. Small explosions popped around him as fragments rained down. For the watching city, it was a show. Their god fighting a monster. For the machine, it was data. It watched how his blasts bent around the tower where Eric still strained to hold the crane. It recorded the way his body resisted its first weapon. It marked him as high threat, high ego, reactive. Then it adjusted its plan again. It did not need to defeat both anomalies now. It only needed to keep one busy and stretch the other until he broke. Eric finally managed to sink the crane safely onto the street, bending the metal to form a cradle that did not crush the cars beneath. People scrambled out and ran, not looking back. He let out a slow breath. His head throbbed. He turned his attention back to the machine just in time to see Homelander rip a piece off it and grin like a kid tearing apart a toy. So this world did have strong defenders, of a sort. Eric rose higher, joining the fight's airspace. The Iron Warden scanned him again, reconsidering the new triangle. He reached out like he had in his world so many times before, fingers closing as if around a throat he could not see. The machine's metal parts screamed as his power gripped them. "Enough of this," Eric said. He tugged. Plates buckled, joint locks popped, internal supports bent under the invisible force. The Warden's main body jerked, its sensors flickering. Homelander laughed. "There we go, Grandpa. Show this toaster who runs things." Eric ignored him. The non-metallic parts of the machine pulsed harder, fighting his field. Ceramic layers shifted, odd synthetic structures flexing away from his pull. It was like trying to hold water in his fist. He tightened his grip. The machine shrieked in a sound that was half metal, half something else. Then a section of its shell tore free with a ripping noise, exposing a glowing inner core wrapped in coils that did not behave like any simple metal. The core flashed. A wave of force knocked Eric back. His shield flared, catching most of it, but he still slid through the air, teeth clenched. Homelander took the rest of the blast on his chest and barely flinched. "Is that all you got?" Homelander shouted at the machine. "Because I've got all day." He did not, of course. He had an ego. He streaked forward again, ready to punch straight through the exposed core. Eric saw it at the same time the Warden did. If Homelander broke the core here, in the middle of the city, the energy burst would not be neat. It would be wild. It would burn in ways these people were not ready for. Eric made a choice on instinct. He seized the metal around the core and twisted, angling it upward. Homelander's punch connected. The core detonated in a beam of blue-white light that shot toward the torn sky instead of down toward the streets. The shockwave still slammed into nearby buildings, blowing out windows and knocking people off their feet, but the worst of it passed into the split above. The tier shuddered, widening for a heartbeat. The Iron Warden used that moment. Its remaining limbs folded in tight. Emergency thrusters fired. It shot upward toward the tear, leaving shards of itself behind. "Where do you think you're going?" Homelander yelled, blasting after it. Eric could have tried to hold it. He could have thrown all his focus into gripping the last metal pieces and dragging the machine back down. But below, the city was still choking. Elevators still hung between floors. Hospitals still sat dark. People trapped behind electric doors still pounded and screamed. He had seen that kind of helpless terror before. It haunted his sleep. He turned his back on the fleeing machine. Homelander cursed as the Iron Warden slipped through the tear and vanished, leaving only a faint shimmer. "Coward!" Homelander roared at the empty sky. The tear sealed behind the machine with a slow, silent ripple. Then the clouds were just clouds again. Homelander hovered there, chest heaving, eyes wild, looking for something else to hit. He turned toward Eric. "You let it go," he said, voice low and dangerous. "You let it get away." Eric floated in place, face lined with strain. "You would have broken this city to keep it," he said. "I chose to save lives instead." Homelander's eyes glowed. "You don't get to choose anything in my city." He shot forward, faster than a bullet. Eric had been waiting for that. The steel from 3 nearby rooftops tore free in a rush, forming a spinning ring around him. Homelander slammed into the metal, denting it, but Eric guided the impact, turning it into a glancing blow. The force still sent him sliding back through the air, cape snapping. He grunted, feeling the raw strength behind the hit. Homelander pulled back and fired twin beams of heat vision. Eric raised both hands. Every piece of metal near them shivered. Cars on distant rooftops twisted. Air vents tore loose. In seconds, a dense, curved panel formed in front of him, shaped by thought. The beams hit the shield. Heat flared. The metal glowed, then softened, then cooled as Eric spread the impact across a wider surface. From below, people saw only flashes of red and white against a storm-gray sky. On TV, the few backup cameras that still worked captured jagged bits of the fight. To the boys, watching on a battered screen in their safe house once power flickered back, it looked like an angry god trying to punch through a moving wall. "Bloody hell," Butcher whispered. Shook his head slowly. "He's not even going all out," he said. "Either of them." Frenchie leaned forward, eyes wide. "You see the way he bends the beams? He's using physics like a toy." Kimiko watched with her jaw clenched, eyes flicking from Homelander to Eric and back. Huey swallowed. "If they really go at it." "The city's done," finished. In the sky, Eric shifted tactics. He did not want this fight. He did not fear Homelander exactly. He respected the danger of raw power without restraint. But this was not the battle that mattered. He needed this world's god to understand something. He dropped the shield at the last moment and dove. Homelander chased, laughing. "Running already?" Eric pulled every loose scrap of metal from the buildings below, weaving them into a spiraling tunnel around them. Homelander smashed through it, shards spinning off around him. Then, with a single sharp gesture, Eric brought all the shards together behind Homelander in a tight, closing ring. For a brief second, Homelander found himself flying through a narrowing tube of jagged steel, walls pressing in just a little too close for comfort. He slowed, just a fraction. Eric stopped dead in the air below him, hand raised. Every car in a 3-block radius lifted off the streets. People screamed and jumped clear as their vehicles rose like bubbles, drifting up toward the 2 men in the sky. Eric did not aim them at Homelander. He held them gently, suspended all around them, a sphere of floating machines. "Look," Eric said, his voice carrying through the humming air. "See what I can do with a thought." Homelander's smile flattened. "If I wished," Eric said, "I could drop them. On your people, on your city. I could pull the nails from their walls, the iron from their blood. Do you understand me, boy?" The word boy hit Homelander like a slap. Red glowed at the edges of his eyes. "Don't call me that," he hissed. Eric's gaze did not waver. "Then listen." For a moment, the world hung on a thread. Then Eric lowered his hand. The cars sank slowly back to the streets, landing with soft bumps. Not one hit a person. Not one crushed a building. "I am not your enemy today," Eric said. "The machine was. The terror is. The ones who gave this world its sickness are. Homelander stared at him, chest heaving. The urge to attack burned in him. So did something else he almost never felt. Doubt. He covered it with a sneer. "You're in my sky," he said. "Don't forget that." He turned away with a sharp snap of his cape and shot back toward Vought Tower, needing cameras and cheering crowds like air. Eric watched him go. The power in the city flickered. Lights came back on in slow waves as systems reset. Somewhere far below, Huey let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. The Iron Warden was gone, but not destroyed. It had escaped with new data and the taste of this world on its sensors. Everyone who had seen the fight now knew one thing for sure. The stranger in the helmet was not just another soup. He was something else entirely. And whatever came next, the game had changed. The news called it a miracle, a disaster, a hoax, and an act of war, sometimes in the same 10-minute segment. Every screen in New York ran the same shaky clips. A crane hanging in the air, cars floating like bubbles, a black machine from the sky, Homelander screaming at a man in a red helmet. On one channel, a Vought expert said, "Without Homelander, we'd all be dead." On a bootleg stream, someone gasped, "No, man, the metal guy saved us. Homelander just punched stuff." Every time that second clip went up, it vanished. Accounts were banned. Videos glitched. Warnings appeared. False information. Dangerous content. But people had seen enough to start asking questions. Huey replayed the same 30 seconds for the 5th time. Magneto in midair, one hand up, the falling crane frozen above terrified drivers. The camera shook hard. Whoever was filming had been on the street. You could hear someone sobbing, "Oh God, oh God," and then quiet when the crane stopped. Mother's Milk stood behind him, arms folded. He watched the screen with a tired, angry stare. "You see that?" Huey said. "Nobody else could do that. Not even Homelander. That thing would have crushed those people." "Yeah," said, "and it took everything he had not to drop it on someone else." "But he didn't," Huey said quickly. "He chose not to." Sighed. "I know. That's what scares me." Butcher walked in, chewing a stale biscuit. "What's the tally then? Metal Gandalf. Still a saint?" Huey glared at him. "He's not a saint. He's complicated." Butcher leaned over the back of the chair, eyes sharp. "Complicated's good. Complicated means leverage." Kimiko sat on the edge of the couch, eyes locked on the screen. In the corner, a small metal fan rattled louder and louder as the clip played. When Magneto lifted his hand and the crane stopped, the fan jumped an inch on the table. Frenchie snorted. "Even the appliances are impressed." The fan settled back. Huey frowned at it for a second, then hit pause. Vought had plastered their logo over the replay in most places now, with a big banner. "Homelander defends city from cosmic threat." But on this file, ripped from some forgotten backup, there was no banner. Just a man in a helmet choosing not to kill. Huey muttered, more to himself than anyone, "He's not like them." Butcher heard him anyway. "We'll see," he said. "World's full of blokes who start with, 'I won't hurt anyone who doesn't deserve it.' Story usually ends with a lot of bodies and a list of excuses. Finally spoke. "Whatever he is, he's a factor now. Vought'll try to own him. Gov'll try to cage him. If we don't at least understand him, we're going in blind." Huey tore his eyes away from the screen, so we talked to him. Properly this time. No guns. No traps. Butcher smiled slowly. "We will. We just let the other bastards go first." Vaught's boardroom smelled like coffee and fear. Emergency lights glowed softly in the ceiling, still a little dim from the recent blackout. The screens on the walls were back on, but some flickered at the edges, as if they remembered being bent out of shape. Stan Edgar stood at the head of the long table, hands folded. On the main screen, footage from the tower fight looped without sound. Homelander firing heat vision, the Iron Warden's beam, Magneto lifting a wave of cars and holding them in midair. Ashley chewed the end of her pen so hard the plastic bent. Okay, let's just spitball. New soup, no Vought contract, no origin story, no control. He beats our grid, he beats our weapons. He sort of beats Homelander. Homelander sat with his arms stretched along the back of his chair, pretending to be relaxed. Every time the clip showed him ricocheting off Magneto's metal shield, his jaw tightened. I let him show off, Homelander said. You know, for the crowd. Of course, Ashley said instantly. Stan didn't bother pretending. He humiliated you, he said calmly. Not by beating you, by choosing not to. Homelander's eyes flashed red. Watch it. Stan held his gaze. The people saw a man who could have crushed them, and didn't. That undercuts our narrative of necessary brutality. He turned to the rest of the room. We have an unregistered high-tier power user. He can manipulate metal and electromagnetic fields at city scale. He appears to have combat experience, situational awareness, and a moral code that does not include us. Ashley raised her hand like a child. Idea. We just tell people he's a terrorist? We will, Stan said. But that only works if we have a handle on him. Right now, we don't even know where he sleeps. On another screen, a map of the city showed points of interference. Little red dots marked the blackout zones, the failed cameras, the spots where signals had died. They'll push for emergency laws, said a new voice. Victoria Newman sat near the middle of the table, wearing a simple blazer, hair pinned up. She had the calm smile of someone who knew which way the wind would blow because she was turning the fan. People are scared, Newman said. A god from the sky breaks our toys and floats our cars. They'll accept anything if we say the word security enough times. Stan nodded. Which you will help with. She smiled. Already writing my speech. Homelander watched them both, feeling something sour move in his chest. For years, he'd been the big answer, the last resort. Now they were talking about laws and bills, not him. You want him gone, Homelander said. Just say it. Stan met his eyes again. I want him managed. If that is not possible, then yes, removed. Homelander stood. Then unleash me. I'll tear him in half. Newman's smile thinned just a little. Except you tried that. On live TV. And he stopped you without killing anyone. People noticed. Homelander took a step toward her. You got something to say? She held up her hands. No. Just, you can't solve this with heat vision alone. We need optics. We need legislation. And if he can do half the things we think he can, we might need him pointed away from us, not directly at us. Stan's gaze sharpened. If we cannot leash a beast, we can at least aim it, he said. For a while. He tapped a button. A new slide came up. Magnetic anomaly psychological profile. Preliminary. Trauma markers, he said. Clear rage toward systems that exploit the weak. Protective impulse toward children and victims. Distrust of authority. But he is rational. He plans. Ashley squinted. So we offer him a cause? Stan nodded. We paint our enemies as the monsters he already hates. Let him hit targets we don't want tied to us. If that fails, we frame him as an existential threat. Then you, he glanced at Homelander, get your clean kill, with public support. Homelander liked that part. He smiled again. Now we're talking. The hearing room on Capitol Hill was packed. Cameras lined the walls. Reporters whispered into their mics. On screen, a still image of Magneto hovered behind the senators. A grainy shot of him on the tower, arms outstretched, cars hanging around him. The headline at the bottom read, Metal Man, and national security. Victoria Newman adjusted her microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice warm, "we are facing a new kind of challenge. This is not just about superheroes. This is about anomalies. Beings who can walk into any city, shut off any power grid, and bring down any plane." Images flashed behind her. Dark runways, stalled traffic, flickering hospital lights. "We need tools to keep our people safe," she went on. "Temporary emergency powers. The ability to track and, if necessary, contain these anomalies before they cause harm." One senator cleared his throat. "Congresswoman Newman, with respect, the footage also shows this man preventing a crane from crushing civilians. Some would say he minimized harm." Newman paused, as if thinking it over. "Intent is impossible to prove," she said. "What we do know is that our entire infrastructure was at his mercy. If someone like that decides to change their mind, we're finished." The clip of the crane stopping played again, but this time the camera angle was cut just so. You couldn't see the cars landing safely, only the metal rising. "Fear is a powerful motivator," she said gently. "I say we use it before someone else does." The vote was a foregone conclusion. On a wind-beaten rooftop, Eric Lenscher listened to the hearing on a bent radio. The device floated beside him, guts exposed to the air, wires twisted to catch the signal. Every time Newman said, "Contain," a nail in the roof shivered. He stood with his hands behind his back, staring out over the city. He had seen these speeches before. Different languages, different flags. Always the same. "We are in danger. We must be strong. Give us more power." From up here, he could feel the new laws forming in steel. Plans to build more prisons, more weapons, more fences with more wires. His jaw tightened. He thought of the crane falling, the screams, the machine from the tear, the boy in the cape who wanted to be worshipped. He thought of the woman of light, asking him who he shined for. The radio crackled as a different channel cut in. A shaky voice, local, not polished. "I was on that bridge," a woman said. "My car was under that crane. It was going to crush me. Then it stopped. I looked up and there was this guy hanging in the air like he was holding it with his hands. He saved us. And now they're saying he's the threat?" The host tried to cut her off, but the call went viral before the station could delete it. Clips bounced through underground chats and burner accounts. Eric listened to her small, scared voice and let himself breathe just once. Not everyone believed the lies, but they believed them enough. He turned the radio off with a flick of his fingers. The casing closed itself neatly. He had a choice: stay above this world and wait for its leaders to decide what to do with him, or act first. He had never been good at waiting. The boys' safe house felt small, with everyone arguing at once. "Butcher, you can't just throw him at Vought and hope he hits the right things," Huey said. "Why not?" Butcher shot back. "He hates the bastards, same as us. He's got the juice to actually hurt them. We don't waste that." MM tapped the table with his pen. "Because once you point a missile, it doesn't always stop where you want. We'd be betting the whole planet on some stranger's trauma issues." Frenchie blew smoke toward the ceiling. Maybe better than betting it on Homelander's mommy issues, no? Kimiko snorted quietly. Starlight sat in a corner, arms wrapped around herself. She looked more tired than usual. "He's not like the others," she said softly. "He doesn't care about fame. He cared about those kids in the plaza. He watched the crowd, not the cameras." Huey nodded. "He's angry, but it's like he's angry at the system, not at people." Butcher rolled his eyes. "Oh, bless. You've all fallen in love with the genocidal granddad." "Genocidal?" Huey asked, frowning. Butcher shrugged. "We don't know what he did before he dropped in. Could have wiped out a city, a continent. This is multiverse crap now. Yeah? MM's voice cut through. We do know he stopped Homelander from making things worse, he said. Twice. And we know Vought's rewriting history, which means they're scared, that we can use. Starlight looked up. Use how? We go to him, MM said. Not as fans, not as cheerleaders, as the only people in this world who'll tell him the truth. Huey met his eyes. And if he decides we're part of the problem? Then we're dead, Butcher said cheerfully. But let's be real. That's true most days anyway. Vought made their move first. 3 men in suits walked down a narrow alley with stiff shoulders and softer eyes. They carried ceramic pistols and Vought ID badges. Their orders were simple. Contact, observe, report. No engagement. They failed on the first step. Metal peeled itself out of the brickwork around them. Old nails, rusted pipes, pieces of grid, rising like snakes. The men froze. Eric floated down above them, coat steady, helmet shadowing his eyes. You are not subtle, he said. The leader raised his hands. We just want to talk. Then why bring guns? The pistols twitched in their holsters, metal edges straining toward him. The men winced. Standard protocol, the leader said quickly. Our employer wants to discuss ownership, Eric finished. He wants to leash what he fears. He gestured. The guns slid out, broke apart into neat pieces that hovered in a slow circle around the men's heads. Keys jumped from pockets, belt buckles twisted. One man's phone wrenched free and spun, screen flashing a Vought logo before dying. The running gag hit hard. A metal trash can lid from half a block away rolled into the alley, bumped into Eric's boot, and stopped like a dog at his feet. He glanced down at it, then back up at the men. Metal has no loyalty, he said. It obeys whoever calls loudest. The leader swallowed. If you don't hear our offer, sir, they'll send worse. Then let them, Eric said, and take them this message. He turned his head slightly, eyes distant. On the other side of the city, the giant V on Vought Tower flickered. Cameras in the boardroom blinked. For 3 full seconds, every feed in the building showed static. Then everything came back. The men in the alley stared up at him, pale. Tell him, Eric said quietly, that if he tries to cage me, I will show him what true darkness looks like, not in his cameras, in his bones. The screws and clips fell, clattering to the ground. The trash lid rolled away. The men ran. Stan Edgar watched the moment of static replay for the 5th time. 3 seconds, Ashley was saying. 3 whole seconds of dead air. We can't even count the advertisers that called. Our brand safety. That was a warning shot, Stan said. Newman peered at the timeline. 3 seconds isn't much. It is if you can turn it into forever. He rubbed his chin. We cannot beat him in the open. Not yet. So we changed the story. He clicked to a new file, a photo from a different world, grainy, black and white, showing a much younger Eric in a crowd behind a barbed wire fence. Dig up everything, Stan said. If he comes from a world that had us, it had cameras. Get me any record of his name, his face, anything we can twist. Ashley nodded, already texting. Newman leaned back, and in the meantime, Stan looked at a separate folder. Ryan's status. We push Homelander, he said. We push fear. And if this stranger cares about children as much as I think he does, we make him watch us hold one over a fire. Newman's smile faded. You're talking about a kid. I'm talking about leverage, Stan said. She didn't argue. The pivot came from Starlight. She met Eric at the half-built shipyard the next night, boots crunching on gravel. The skeletons of ships and cranes rose around them like ghosts. Under his power, they had begun to bend into new shapes, curved walls, layered shields, tunnels. What are you doing? She asked. watching a beam float into place. "Making a refuge," he said, "before your masters start filling more graves." Her throat tightened. "You think that's all we are? Graves?" "I think your company feeds on suffering," he said, "and your leaders tell themselves it is for the greater good." She winced. "You're not wrong." He stopped moving metal and turned to her. "You risk much coming here," he said. "Why?" She reached into her coat and pulled out a file folder, worn and bulging. She held it out. "Because I'm done being part of it," she said. He took the folder. Inside were copies of documents, pictures of labs, rows of babies with blue fluid tubes, shipping manifests, names, dates, locations. One address was circled 3 times in red. "What is this?" he asked, though he already knew. "A black site," she said, "off the books, where they test new compound V mixes, on kids, on people they think no one cares about." His fingers pressed into the paper, leaving dents. "Why give this to me?" he asked. "Because I can't stop them alone," she said. "Because I'm tired of hearings and speeches and pretending. And because if you're going to fight, I'd rather you hit the right place first." He looked at the circled address. "They will kill you for this," he said quietly. She held his gaze. "They've already tried." For a moment, he saw a much younger girl behind her eyes, in a sparkly costume, surrounded by men who smiled with teeth, not kindness. He closed the folder. "No more children in cages," he said. When he looked up, his voice was something harder than steel. "This ends now." The shipyard by the river stopped being just a hideout and became something else. By day, Eric shaped metal into walls. Rusted hulls became curved shelters. Old containers became sleeping rooms. He bent support beams into arches that could take a missile hit. Starlight brought blankets and food under fake names. Kimiko arrived with a boy who could make things levitate just by staring if he got scared. Frenchie smuggled in medication and tools. Huey organized lists, names, needs, languages. The routine was simple. People cleaned, people cooked. Children laughed sometimes, small and uncertain, like they weren't sure they were allowed. Eric walked through the halls with his hands behind his back, not as a king, but as a watchman. Whenever someone yelled in surprise or dropped something heavy, a nearby piece of metal jumped, spoons rattled, bed frames creaked, as his reflexes flared. The running gag got old quickly, and somehow also comforting. One morning, a teenager from the labs tried to slam a door in anger. Before it could shut, the hinges hopped and the door stuck halfway, vibrating. She stared at it, then at Eric. He gave a small shrug. "The metal here is very nervous," he said. She snorted a laugh she hadn't known she still had. At night, when most of the sanctuary slept, Eric stood on the highest piece of bent hull and looked toward the circled address in his mind. The facility was outside the city, hidden, protected. To others, it was a fortress. To him, it was a wound. He decided to treat it like one. The mission started as a small thing. That's what he told himself. A strike to free the captives, destroy the data, show Vought that someone was watching. He did not mean to start a war. He flew alone toward the facility before dawn, cape trailing in the gray light. The black site was buried under a fake warehouse complex. Trucks, fences, a few bored guards. To average eyes, it looked like a logistics hub. To his senses, it pulsed with metal and machines under the ground. He hovered high, eyes half closed, and reached down with his power. Every camera lens on the outer wall twisted. Every lock bolt pulled itself free. The fences unhooked from their posts and fell outward in slow motion, letting the wind through. He landed in the yard without a sound. Guards shouted. They raised ceramic guns that were mostly plastic, but the tiny springs still betrayed them. The guns flew apart in their hands. "I do not want to kill you," Eric called, voice calm. "Leave." Two men dropped their rifles and ran. One tried to draw a backup weapon and got slammed into a wall by his own belt buckle tightening like a snake. Eric walked to the main service elevator, pressed his palm to the doors, and simply peeled them open. Below was a shaft that went far down. Metal rails hummed, leading into the dark. He stepped off and floated down like a shadow. The lowest level smelled like antiseptic and fear. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Clear cells lined the corridor, each one holding something that used to be a person and was now a project. A girl with glowing veins. A boy whose skin shifted colors when anyone moved. A man with eyes that wouldn't close. Eric's breath hitched. He had seen corridors like this with different tools, different uniforms, always the same look in the prisoner's eyes. He raised his hand. Locks popped open one by one, doors sliding back. The captives flinched. "You are free," he said. They stared at him, unsure. He softened his voice. "Come, we are leaving." Slowly, they stepped out. A siren started somewhere above, low at first, then louder. Red lights flashed. Eric expected it. He guided the group toward the lift shaft. As they moved, more doors opened ahead of them without touching. He walked at the front, not looking back, trusting they would follow. On the surface, a black van rolled to a stop near the fence line. Butcher stepped out, squinting at the warehouse. "This is the place," he said. "Smell of corporate evil all over it?" checked his watch. Starlight said he was coming early. She didn't say how early. Frenchie peered through binoculars. Fences are down. Cameras are blind. Very rude of him to start the party without us. Kimiko cracked her knuckles. Huey fidgeted with a borrowed vest. "We're sure we want to be here? During whatever he's—" The ground shook. A section of the warehouse roof buckled and rose, not from an explosion, but as if something below had simply decided it wanted more sky. "Yeah," Butcher said with a dark grin. "I think we're in the right place." Inside, Eric reached the last corridor. At the end was a heavier door, thicker, lined with materials that slipped through his senses like oil. They had learned a little then. He smiled without humor. "Stubborn," he murmured. "I remember this game." He focused on the hinges, the bolts, the smallest screws. Bit by bit, the door began to groan. The sirens cut off with a sudden click. Silence fell. He paused. That was new. Then he felt it. A pressure from above, not from the roof this time, but from the sky itself. A wave rolling through the metal bones of the building, making them ring like struck bells. He recognized the pattern now. The Iron Warden was back. And this time, it had come to play in his house. The machine punched through the clouds over the facility like a spear. It had been rebuilt. Vought tech clung to its sides. Stolen drones, armored plates with their logo scraped off. New ceramic layers covered much of its body, slick and invisible to magnetic pull. It scanned the building and found its target, the magnetic source deep below. It also registered dozens of smaller signatures, guards, captives, 4 anomalies near the edge of the compound. Threat map updated. Primary, Magneto. Secondary, Homelander. Tertiary, others. It deployed its swarm. Drones poured down like a black rain. From the van, Huey's eyes went wide. "Oh, that's not good." Frenchie whistled softly. "I did not bring enough explosives for this." "Yet you brought any at all," said. "That's what worries me." Kimiko stepped forward, lips pressed thin. "Ready." Butcher watched the sky, mind racing. "Right," he said. "New plan. We get in, grab whoever we can, and don't get turned into soup by the giant murder blender." He slapped Huey's shoulder. "Stick close to Starlight. If things go to hell, she's our flashlight and our shield." Starlight's eyes glowed faintly. "Not exactly a plan," she muttered, but she moved toward the nearest entrance anyway. Overhead, the Iron Warden locked onto the facility's generator and fired a pulse. Lights died. Power lines snapped. Any backup systems that tried to spin up were strangled by the field. Deep underground, Eric felt the change. He looked back at the line of freed captives and made a quick decision. "The shaft," he said. "Up. Now." He sent them ahead, lifting them with a gentle magnetic push, as if the elevator had returned. The walls hummed as he guided their ride. He stayed at the bottom. When the last child disappeared upward, he turned toward the heavy door again. Lights flickered. The siren tried to restart and failed. He planted his feet on the concrete and raised both hands. "You hunted me across worlds," he said quietly. "Today, I hunt back." The door tore free. On the surface, the battle became chaos in seconds. Drones swept low, blasting stun charges and cutting beams. Starlight lit the yard with a golden flare, blasting several out of the air. Kimiko leaped onto another, tearing it in half with a scream. Frenchie dove behind a concrete barrier, pulling with him as a shard of ceramic sliced through where they'd just been. "Note to self," Frenchie gasped. "Next time, more armor. And a tank." Peeked out just long enough to shoot a drone with a borrowed rifle. The bullet ricocheted off uselessly. "Ceramic," he muttered. "Of course." Huey stuck close to Starlight, heart hammering. Every time a drone got too near, she blinded it with a burst of light. The air smelled like ozone and burning plastic. Above, the Iron Warden hovered, head turning as it tracked the magnetic storm below. It fired a focused beam into the earth. The ground cracked. A pillar of twisted rebar and concrete erupted from below, deflecting the shot. Eric rose with it, wrapped in a magnetic field like a cloak. Dust and bits of metal spun around him. The drones shifted in his direction at once. He flicked his fingers and a ring of scrap. Fallen beams, shredded doors, chunks of cars from the parking lot, whipped into a shield around him, and the shaft exit where the freed captives were stumbling out. "Stay behind me," he told them, without looking back. A drone darted low toward a child's face. Kimiko appeared in its path, face twisted with fury, and punched it so hard it crumpled. Its remains jerked toward Eric, sucked into the spin of his field. The Iron Warden analyzed this. New variables, new allies, new strategies. It fired 3 ceramic lances in an arc, one at Eric, one at the Sanctuary's group, one at the van where Butcher and were. Starlight threw herself in front of the closest, blasting it apart. The force knocked her on her back. Huey scrambled to pull her up. Eric met his with a wall of metal dragged from below, the pieces fusing into a thick plate. The lance punched halfway through before stopping. He felt the stress. The Warden had grown stronger. Above them all, a bright red and white streak cut through the clouds. Homelander arrived late, soaked in anger. He took one look at the mess. The broken facility. Magneto standing center stage, people cheering him from cover, and snapped. "Mine," he snarled and flew straight at the Iron Warden. For a brief moment, Magneto, Homelander, and the machine fought like 3 storms colliding. Homelander slammed into the Warden's side, ripping off a cluster of drones. He laughed, wild-eyed. "Round 2, toaster!" The Warden spun, adjusted, and fired a burst of energy tuned to his last readings. The blast staggered Homelander but didn't drop him. Eric took advantage. He seized the chunks of metal Homelander had torn free and hurled them back at the Warden at high speed, turning them into bullets the size of cars. The machine dodged some, blocked others with ceramic shields. For a few seconds, all three forces were deadly and in balance. From the ground, it looked like gods painting the sky with fire. Huey, pressed against a half-toppled wall, stared up in disbelief. "We're so dead," he whispered. Ducked as debris rained down. "Not if we move. Frenchie, how's our exit?" Frenchie held up a small remote. "If I press this, we have a new door. Also, maybe no eyebrows." "Do it," Butcher said. Frenchie hit the trigger. Charges he'd planted earlier, a just-in-case habit, blew out a section of the fence and an outer wall, opening a path toward the tree line. "Evac route," shouted. "Move! Move!" The freed captives began to pour through the gap, helped along by Huey and Kimiko. Starlight limped on one leg, still blasting any drone that got too brave. Every time panic started to rise, Eric's presence pushed it back. The metal around them curved to guide people toward the opening, forming railings and cover without touching flesh. The Iron Warden noticed. It changed tactics. Instead of focusing on Eric directly, it targeted the escape corridor. Drones dove for the gap, firing wide arcs of stun electricity that would drop dozens at once. Eric felt the attack vector and swore under his breath in a language no one here knew. He spread his arms wide. Metal screamed as it ripped from the facility, from trucks, from buried piping. A dome formed over the fleeing group, thin but complete, like the shell of a steel egg. The drones hit it and skittered off, some exploding. Inside the dome, it was dim and hot, but safe. Outside, Eric stood alone with Homelander and the Warden. Homelander didn't like sharing the spotlight. He blasted the Warden's core with heat vision again and again, shouting, "Look at me! I'm your target!" The machine divided its fire, one stream at him, one at Eric's shield dome. Eric's jaw clenched. Sweat ran down his neck. He kept the dome up and still tried to drag the Warden down with every scrap of metal he could find. "Stop hitting the shield," he snapped at Homelander. "Focus on the core." "Don't tell me what to do," Homelander yelled. Then the Warden made its smartest move yet. It fired one more beam, not at Eric or Homelander, but at the ground just behind the dome. The blast hit the earth and spread under the shell like a ripple. The shock caught Frenchie and Huey as they were helping someone through the gap, throwing them off their feet. Huey's head hit the concrete. For a second, everything went fuzzy. He heard screaming far away, felt someone try to pull him, saw a light flare. Then, dimly, he saw a small form stumble back toward the open yard. A kid, no more than 10, running the wrong way. A drone darted toward the child, cutting beam already charging. Huey's body moved before his brain did. He sprinted, legs shaking, and threw himself in front of the kid, arms spread. He squeezed his eyes shut. The beam never hit. When he opened them, he saw a wall of warped car doors hovering a foot in front of his nose. The metal was so close, he could see the paint bubbles. On the other side of the field, the beam carved a line in the air and flickered out. The car doors shifted away, floating back into the spinning storm around Magneto. Eric stood with one hand out toward Huey, face tight with effort. "Move!" he barked. "Get them out!" Huey grabbed the kid and ran, heart in his throat. The Iron Warden was losing pieces now. Half its drones were down. Its ceramic plates were cracked. Its core glowed white-hot. It had one last contingency: retreat with data. It fired a cluster of small, almost invisible pods toward the sky, each one loaded with recorded energy patterns, visual logs, and compound Vi signatures. Eric sensed them too late. He slammed the main body of the Warden with a final, brutal magnetic crush. The machine folded in on itself, shrieking, then exploded in a shower of debris. The pods rode the blast shock upward, tiny and fast. Homelander cheered. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. He blasted the largest chunk of the broken core out of existence with heat vision, savoring the moment. He didn't see the pod slip through the clouds. Eric did. He reached for them, stretching his senses to their limits, but the ceramic shells held. They had almost no metal, almost nothing to grip. Almost. He caught two and dragged them back, crushing them in his fist. 3 escaped. The tear in the sky did not open this time. The pods vanished somewhere out of his reach, heading for another relay, another world, another lab. The data was gone. The threat was not finished. He lowered his hands. The dome over the evac route melted away slowly, metal settling into twisted piles like tired bones. Homelander floated in place, chest heaving. "You see that?" he called down. "We make a pretty good team." Eric looked up at him. "I was saving lives," he said. "You were saving your image." Homelander's smile curdled. "Careful, old man." Below, people were cheering, crying, hugging. Some looked up at Homelander with relief. Others looked at the man in the helmet. Those were the ones Vought would have to worry about. By the time the last captive was loaded into Frenchie's stolen truck convoy, and the boys had patched their wounds, the sun was low. Starlight stood at the edge of the ruined yard, watching Eric. He stood in the middle of the wreckage, breathing hard, surrounded by slag and dust. Bits of broken Warden lay in a halo around him. "You did it," she said. He shook his head. "I delayed it. It will send what it learned. Others will come. Maybe not here. Maybe not soon. But they will." She swallowed. "And Vought?" He looked at the smoking remains of the lab. "They will tell the world I destroyed a safe testing facility," he said. "They will cut the footage, show only the parts that make me look like the monster." "Some people saw what really happened," she said. "Some is not enough," he replied. He turned toward the river, toward the city beyond. "I will not be their weapon," he said. "I will not be their villain. But I will not let them do this again." Starlight stepped closer. "Then what are you going to be?" He thought of a boy behind a fence, a crowd cheering for their own chains, a god in a cape who didn't understand what it meant to be human. "Necessary," he said. She wasn't sure if that scared her or gave her hope. That night, footage of the black site leaked. Someone, no one on record, dumped files, images, and live clips of the rescued captives onto 100 small servers at once. The internet choked on them. Vought tried to spin it. They called it a rogue program, a distorted attack on their life-saving research. They called Magneto a mass murderer, a terrorist, a cosmic invader. But when talk show hosts played the edited version of the battle, people asked, "Why are those kids thanking him?" In bars, on buses, in crowded apartments, ordinary people repeated the same words. He saved them. And in every boardroom, war room, and back room, people repeated a different set. "We can't ignore him. Everything we do now has to account for him. He's the variable." The world had new laws, new fears, and a new center of gravity made of steel and will, standing by the river, building a sanctuary in the ruins of their lies. Weeks passed. The city healed on the surface. Lights stayed on. Trains ran. People went back to work because they had to. But nothing felt the same. Every news show had a section now. Anomaly Watch. They ran grainy photos of Magneto's shipyard, circles drawn in red around twisted steel shapes. They showed clips of the black site raid with a smooth Vought voice saying, "Dangerous extremist targets, vital research facility." On other screens, smaller ones, people shared different clips in secret. Children being carried out of cages. The man in the helmet holding back a swarm of machines. Homelander knocked out of the sky for a second. Nobody agreed on whether he was a savior or a threat. Everyone agreed on one thing. The world now had to plan around him. By the river. The sanctuary had a rhythm. Every morning, the big doors of bent steel slid open with a low hum. Sunlight spilled into long halls made from ship hulls turned sideways. Children ran down the paths, their footsteps echoing off the metal. Some of them had powers. Tiny, raw, untrained. One girl could make a faint fog when she got nervous. A boy could lift small objects with his mind if he stared hard enough. Another kid's skin turned hard as stone when someone shouted. Eric did not turn them into soldiers. He taught them control. He stood with them in an open yard, chalk lines drawn on the cracked concrete, and said, again, as they tried small tricks. A pebble moved. A hand glowed. A breath slowed. When someone got scared, spoons rattled in the kitchen. Nails lifted from boards. Light fixtures buzzed. The metal felt his tension and jumped. The running gag became a kind of weather report. If forks were floating, Eric was stressed. Metal's having a mood, Frenchie would say, ducking as a stray wrench drifted overhead. Everyone be nice. Kimiko worked with the kids who liked to fight. She showed them how to punch without breaking their own fingers. She did not smile much, but they trusted her. Starlight came 3 nights a week with supplies and medicine. She sat on the edge of a metal stair, costume hidden under a hoodie, watching Eric shape beams into perfect arches without tools. "You know you're building a target," she said once. He didn't stop working. "I am building a promise," he replied. "Targets come whether you build or not." Huey helped where he could. Lists, repairs, talking to frightened parents. He brought in people who had nowhere else to go. He also brought news. He was the one who told them about the new law. "Anomaly Control Act," he said, holding up a folded newspaper. "Emergency powers. Newman got it through in record time." Starlight took the paper and scanned it. "They can detain anyone with dangerous potential abilities without trial," she read. "Unlimited term. No oversight." Frenchie blew out a long breath. "Ah, so prison, but with more paperwork." MM, who had come by that day to check on the rescued captives, shook his head. "They're not just aiming at him," he said. "They're building a net for every soup who steps out of line." Eric listened, eyes on the beam he was bending. "This is how it begins," he said. "How what begins?" Huey asked. "The Garden of Cages," Eric said. "They plant laws like seeds. One day you look up and everything that grows is a fence." In Vought's glass tower, the garden looked different. Charts and poles lined the walls of the smaller war room. Red and blue lines climbed and dipped, showing fear levels, trust in Homelander, belief in the Metal Man threat. Stan Edgar traced a finger along one graph. "Public support for the act is at 68%, he said. "Fear is a good fertilizer." Ashley checked her tablet. "We've got 3 new security contracts approved because of it. Military wants our expertise on anomaly containment." Newman sat at the end of the table, going over a draft. "They'll ask how we plan to enforce this without starting riots," she said. "People like the idea of control until they see it up close." "We show them monsters," Stan said simply. "Then we show them leashes." On another screen, Homelander watched old footage of himself, louder than necessary. He had a remote in one hand, squeezing it until the plastic creaked. Stan glanced at him. "We'll need you for the next stage," he said. "A show of strength. But not against him. Yet." Homelander scoffed. "What? You want me to arrest some C-list soup so you can look tough in hearings?" "Exactly," Stan said. "We pick soft targets, rogue anomalies, scapegoats. You take them down on camera, the act looks justified. People feel safe. Meanwhile, I reach out to our friend by the river. Newman looked up. You really think he'll listen? He cares about children and victims, Stan said. We offer him a deal that protects those. He'll at least come to the table. And if he doesn't? Homelander asked. Stan's eyes were flat. Then we adjust. But first, we test his limits. The offer came in a simple way. A small drone, stripped of weapons and painted white, hovered just outside the sanctuary's open gate one morning. It carried a speaker and a metal box. Kids pointed and whispered. Kimiko stepped between them and the drone, ready. Eric walked up with Starlight and Huey at his side. Metal around the yard hummed softly. The drone speaker crackled. Stan Edgar's voice came through, calm as always. Eric Lensher, he said. I'd rather not shout across the river. I'm sending you a message, not a weapon. The metal box latched to the drone's bottom slid off and floated gently toward Eric, guided by his power before it could fall. He opened it with a thought. Inside was a tablet, switched on but offline. A video file waited on the screen. He touched it. Stan's face appeared, recorded. No green screen. No fancy set. Just him at a simple desk. Thank you for watching, Stan said. I will keep this short. You know who I am. I know enough about you now to skip the introductions. He folded his hands. You hate what we do to children. So do I, in my own way. Not for moral reasons. For cost reasons. Chaos is bad for business. Starlight snorted. He almost had a soul there for a second. Eric watched in silence. I cannot let you attack our facilities without response, Stan went on. That would show weakness. But I also cannot afford a full war with someone who can pull down my building with a thought. He leaned forward. So I propose an arrangement. I am willing to shut down specific black sites permanently. In exchange, you stop targeting us and focus on the greater threat. The screen cut to footage of the Iron Warden and the tear. You know this machine, Stan's voice said. We have intercepted data from its fragments. There will be more like it, possibly worse. If you want to protect this world, you will need resources, information, infrastructure, things only we can provide at scale. He reappeared. Come to a neutral place. We will talk. No cameras, no traps. You have my word. The video ended with an address and a time. Huey let out a breath. That sounds like a trap. Of course it's a trap, Starlight said. Eric closed the tablet. The metal frame bent a little under his fingers. He is right about one thing, he said. There will be more machines, more tears. Kimiko signed quickly. Huey translated. So we go together, or not at all. Frenchie, just arriving with a crate of supplies, caught the tail end. Ooh, mysterious meetings with devils, he said. My favorite. Butcher showed up later that day when Starlight was gone, as if he could smell the word deal on the wind. In the small office space they'd set up, 2 metal stools and a salvage desk, Butcher laid it out bluntly. Vought wants to hire you, he said. You don't need me to tell you that's a bad idea. I am aware, Eric said dryly. But they are right about one thing, Butcher went on. Homelander won't stop. He won't share. You've seen him. He's a rabid dog with lasers for eyes. Only ends one way. He leaned forward, eyes hard. You and me, we can end him. For good. Before he gets more of these kids killed. Before he turns his own boy into a weapon. Eric's gaze sharpened. Boy? Ryan, Butcher said. Little lad with his eyes. Poor sod. Vought and Homie are tugging him back and forth like a chew toy. He's got power like his dad. No control. No one sane in his life. He watched Eric closely. You care about children. Fine. Here's one in the crosshairs. Help me take the bastard off the board. We give the kid a chance." Eric was silent for a long moment. "Why does it matter to you?" he asked finally. "You speak of him with care." A muscle jumped in Butcher's jaw. "Because my wife died because of that kid," he said. "Because of Vought. Because of Homelander. And I still don't want to see the boy turned into his old man." He looked away, then back. "I ain't asking you to be a hero. I'm asking you to help me kill a monster so we can all breathe for 5 minutes." Eric folded his hands. In another life, another world, he had made that choice many times. Kill one monster, save many. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes 2 more grew from the corpse. "I will not be your hired knife," he said quietly. "I will not do Vought's killing. I will not do yours." Butcher's smile was grim. "Then pick your own reasons. But when we take that shot, old man, I hope you're on our side, because if you're not..." He let the sentence hang. Eric understood anyway. When Butcher left, the door hinges rattled. The sanctuary's metal settled after a few seconds, like a deep breath. The meeting place was an old stadium on the edge of the city. Long before Supus, it had held football games and concerts. Now it sat mostly empty, too old for Vought's brand, and too new to be a treasured relic. It was perfect for secret things. Eric arrived first. He floated down through a gap in the torn roof and landed on the cracked grass. Seats rose around him in a ring of faded plastic. The scoreboard was dead. The metal in the building hummed quietly, restless. He extended his senses. There were cameras, yes, but none of them live. No hidden gun turrets, no tanks parked outside, only hearts. A handful of guards at the gates, their guns mostly ceramic. A cluster of people in the VIP tunnel. One of those heartbeats was strange, younger, strong, familiar in a way that made his chest ache. He walked toward the tunnel. Stan Edgar waited there in a dark coat, hands clasped. Beside him stood Victoria Newman, polished and pleasant as ever. And between them, shifting from foot to foot, eyes wide, was a boy with short brown hair and a nervous frown. Ryan. Eric had seen a few clips of him, grainy photos, a profile in a file. None of that matched seeing him in person. He looked like any kid dragged to a meeting he didn't understand. Except his aura hummed like a star. "Thank you for coming," Stan said. Eric's eyes stayed on the boy. "You brought a child," he said, "to a negotiation." Homelander stepped out of the shadows of the tunnel then, smiling too wide. "He wanted to meet you," Homelander said. "Didn't you, buddy?" Ryan looked between them, unsure. "You're the metal guy," he said. Eric inclined his head. "Eric," he said. "And you are Ryan." Ryan nodded. "You stopped the big robot." "I tried," Eric said. "It will send others." Newman cleared her throat. "We're all very impressed with your efforts," she said. "But we're here to talk about something else." Stan gestured toward the field. "Walk with us," he said. They moved a few steps out into the open. Homelander floated instead of walking, staying close to Ryan. From high up in the stands, Butcher watched through binoculars, lying flat behind a row of seats. Frenchie lay beside him with a small case of contingencies. "You sure about this?" MM whispered into the comm. "Not even a little," Butcher murmured back. "But I'm not missing this party." On the grass, Stan got to the point. "We all want the same thing," he said. "Stability. Safety for those under our protection. An end to senseless suffering." Eric's helmet tilted. "Our definitions of senseless may differ." Stan nodded. "Of course. But we can agree that children in cages are bad optics for everyone." Newman watched him carefully. Ryan stared at the ground. I am prepared to shut down all sites like the one you attacked, Stan said. Permanently. No more tests on unwilling subjects. No more secret labs. In return, you stop attacking Vought assets and work with us against outside threats. Machines from tiers. Rogue anomalies. He paused. You will have this sanctuary of yours recognized as a protected zone. No raids, no arrests, off limits. Eric studied him. You would give up such power that easily? Stan smiled thinly. I don't give things up. I trade. Your presence already makes those sites a liability. It is more efficient to close a few doors and build new ones. Newman added, You could actually help people, Eric. With our resources, our reach, you wouldn't have to play defense forever. Homelander rolled his shoulders. Look, old man, you're strong. I'm strong. Together, we keep the bugs out. You get your little metal camp by the river. We keep this world from turning into a war zone. Win-win. Eric looked at Ryan again. What do you want? He asked the boy directly. Ryan blinked, surprised. No one had asked him that in months. I want people to stop yelling, Ryan said quietly. I want Dad to stop hurting people. I want everyone to stop lying. Homelander's smile faltered. Hey, I don't... Ryan looked down. And I don't want to be a weapon, he whispered. The words hung in the air. Eric's chest tightened. He saw himself for a moment, small and hungry, looking up at uniforms and fences. He saw other children he had failed, other deals he had made, times he had chosen power over mercy, and told himself it was for the greater good. He turned back to Stan. How many of your offers, he asked, have ever truly freed anyone? Stan met his gaze without flinching. Freedom is a story people tell, he said. Stability is what keeps the lights on. Eric let the silence sit. The metal under the grass shifted, restless. High in the stands, Butcher whispered, Come on, say no, so I can blow the lot of you. Frenchie elbowed him. We agreed. No boom unless Homelander goes wild. Butcher's thumb rested near a trigger anyway. Eric raised one hand, palm up. Tiny ripples spread through the stadium. Bolts turned in their anchors. Nails slid from boards. The old scoreboard creaked as its frame relaxed. Ryan's eyes went wide as he felt the whole building shiver. Once, Eric said, voice carrying easily, I believed deals with men like you could change the world. I compromised. I played politics. And every time the cages came back in a new shape. He closed his fist. The nearest row of empty seats crumpled in on themselves, plastic and metal folding like paper. No one stood there. No one was hurt. Stan didn't flinch. Newman did. I will not serve you, Eric said. Not for safety. Not for resources. Not even to fight your machines. I will not become your enforcer. Homelander's eyes flared red. You're turning down a chance to stand with me? Eric turned his head slowly. You think I want to stand with you? The air hummed. Enough, Newman snapped, forcing a smile back onto her face. This is a mistake. We are offering you protection. We are offering those kids protection. You are offering them a bigger cage, Eric said, with nicer walls. He stepped closer to Ryan. Homelander tensed. Watch it. Eric stopped a safe distance away, then knelt slightly to be closer to the boy's height. The metal in his helmet hummed, but his voice was gentle. You are not a weapon, he said. Ryan swallowed. Dad says, your father is wrong about many things, Eric said. You will choose what you become. Not him, not them, not me. Ryan looked at him, eyes bright and confused. How? By remembering this, Eric said. Power is not who you are. It is what you do. When you are asked to hurt people for someone else's plan, ask yourself who profits. Ask yourself who bleeds. Homelander moved fast, grabbing Ryan's shoulder. "We're done here," he said. "He's filling your head with garbage." Ryan flinched, but didn't pull away fully. Stan's voice cut in. "So there is no deal." "There is a line," Eric said. Metal all around them rose an inch. Seats, gates, the scoreboard, the giant light fixtures on the roof, even the rails of the upper decks. Everyone present felt it like a pressure in their teeth. "You will close your labs," he said. "You will stop putting children in cages. You will end your black sites. If you do not, I will tear them down myself. Every time, every world." Newman's jaw tightened. "You can't be everywhere." "No," Eric said. "But you never know where I am." He looked at Newman, really looked, and felt something odd. A pressure behind her eyes, a tightness, like a coiled spring. He understood, on some level, that she was more than she seemed. "You hide knives," he said softly. "So do I." Her eyes widened just slightly. He turned back to Homelander. "And you," he said, "if you ever raise your hand to that boy in anger, if you ever use him as a shield, I will show you what it means to be helpless." Homelander laughed, but the sound cracked. "You think you can scare me?" Eric didn't answer with words. He let the stadium feel him. The entire structure lifted half an inch off its foundations. Concrete moaned. Steel beams flexed. Dust rained from the ceiling. For one terrifying second, everyone understood that if he chose, he could bring the whole thing down on their heads. He did not. He set it back, gently. The echo of that instant would stay in their bones for a long time. High in the stands, Butcher swore under his breath. "Yeah," he said. "All right. That's something." Frenchie nodded slowly. "I am suddenly very glad we did not come here with more bombs." Stan swallowed once, the first real crack in his composure. Newman's hand twitched near her temple, like she wanted to scratch an itch, and didn't. Homelander held Ryan tighter than he meant to. The boy winced. Metal near Homelander's hands groaned. Eric's eyes sharpened. "Careful," he said quietly. For a second, Homelander met his gaze and felt it. Not just power, but absolute refusal. A man who had already lost too much and would not let one more child be broken if he could help it. Homelander let go of Ryan's shoulder. "Fine," he spat. "Take your little moral high ground. But when the next thing comes out of the sky, don't come crying to me." He shot upward, breaking through a gap in the roof, needing air and adoration. Ryan watched him go, then looked back at Eric. "Will you stop them?" Ryan asked. "I will try," Eric said. "But some fights are not mine. Some will be yours." Ryan nodded slowly, not really understanding yet, but knowing it mattered. Stan cleared his throat. "If you touch our operations again," he said, "we'll treat it as an act of war." Eric turned away. "Then prepare for war," he said, "because I will not stop." He rose into the air, metal swirling around him like a loose cloak, and left the stadium through the hole Homelander had made. From the stands, Butcher watched him go. "Still think he's a weapon?" MM asked quietly. Butcher lowered the binoculars. "Yeah," he said, "but he's not ours. That's the trouble." The city looked smaller from above now. Lights twinkled, cars flowed, news tickers scrolled lies and half-truths across building faces. Eric could feel the tiny bits of metal in every corner. He had turned down power. He had turned down revenge, at least for now. He had taken on a harder role. He would not be a king. He would not be a soldier for hire. He would be something in between. A shadow with iron in his hands and a promise in his chest. No more children in cages. No more cages, if he could help it. He angled his flight toward the river, toward the humming heart of his sanctuary, and thought of the tear in the sky and the pods that had escaped. His work here was only beginning. Night lay soft over the shipyard. The sanctuary glowed with a few warm lights, old lamps rewired, strings of bulbs hung along metal beams. The river lapped at the twisted hulls that now formed a wall against the dark. Inside, the kids slept. Some snored. Some muttered in their dreams. One floated 2 inches above his mattress without knowing it until Eric walked past and gently guided him back down with a tap of the bed frame. In the main hall, a long table was covered with dishes from dinner. Someone had tried to make spaghetti. The noodles were a little stiff, the sauce a little salty, but no one had complained. A fork near the edge of a plate trembled, then slid forward and clinked to the floor. Eric bent to pick it up. "You're doing that again," Starlight said from the doorway. He straightened, fork in hand. "Doing what?" She stepped in, hands in the pockets of a plain jacket. "The metal thing. It moves when you're thinking too hard." He set the fork back carefully. "I am often thinking too hard," he said. She smiled a little. "I heard about the stadium," she said. "Word travels fast, even when they try to bury it." He moved toward the open doorway that looked out over the water. She fell into step beside him. "A few people think you're insane," she said, turning down Vought, turning down Butcher, drawing a line with no backup. "They are wrong," he said. "I have backup." He nodded toward the sleeping halls. "Them." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the faint sounds of breathing and distant traffic. "You know they're not going to stop," she said quietly. "Vought, Newman, even Butcher, they'll all keep pushing. New laws, new plans, new bombs, new machines." "I know," he said. "You could have left," she said, "when the tier first opened. You could have tried to go home." He watched the water catch reflections from the city. "That tier was not a door," he said. "It was a wound. My world may be gone, or it may be worse than this. Here, at least, I can do something." She looked up at him. "So what are you now?" He thought about it. "In my world, they called me terrorist, savior, murderer, hero," he said. "None of those ever felt true." He reached out with a tiny gesture. From a scrap pile near the dock, a small piece of metal rose, a bent nail. It floated to his palm. He straightened it with a thought, then flicked it toward a wooden post where it sank in cleanly. "I am a man who remembers what happens when no one stands between the monster and the child," he said. "That is enough." She nodded slowly. "Some people out there are starting to tell stories about you," she said. "Kids in the city. They say there's a metal ghost who comes when bad men try to take them away." He snorted softly. "I prefer guardian to ghost. But children may call me what they wish." From the shadows of another doorway, Huey leaned on the frame, listening. He didn't speak. He just watched them and felt, for the first time in a long time, something like hope that wasn't attached to a brand. Kimiko walked past with a blanket over her shoulder, heading to tuck in one of the younger kids. The metal door handle jumped a little as she touched it. She smiled to herself and kept going. Out on the water, a barge horn sounded, low and lonely. Eric looked toward the sky. He felt something there that most others couldn't. A faint, rough patch in the fabric above the city. It wasn't a full tear. Not yet. More like a scar that hadn't finished healing. "More will come," he said softly. Starlight followed his gaze. "Machines? Machines. Men. Ideas." He shrugged. "Power always finds new ways to hurt the weak." She sighed. Then I guess we'll need new ways to stop it. We will, he said. We have time. For now. Behind them, somewhere deep in the tower district, a red light blinked in a Vought control room. A file on a secure server updated by a single line. Subject, Magneto. Threat level, Omega. Containment, not possible. No one saw it except Stan and Newman. They stared at the words for a long moment, then moved on to other files. Other plans. In the shipyard, a small child rolled over in their sleep and reached out. Their hand brushed the metal wall. It warmed slightly, just enough to feel like a touch back. Eric closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the hum of a world that did not want him, but needed someone like him anyway. He opened them and stepped back inside. The hallway light flickered. The fork on the table rattled once more, then lay still. Outside, the river kept moving. The city kept lying to itself, and sometimes telling the truth by accident. The sky stayed whole for now. And somewhere in the dark, under the skin of this universe, machines whispered about a man who could bend their bones and refuse to bow. Life in this world went on. Different now,